Mm. All right, excellent. Well, welcome everyone to our virtual school garden club. I'm happy we have some folks who are here to join us live, and for everyone who can't make it today, we'll be sharing this recording to you. So our virtual school garden club is a series that meets once a month to talk through a few different tasks or challenges or timely things that may be going on in school gardens. And I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and often a lot of our participants are too, but sometimes we have folks from all over the place. Some of these things may be really specific to Georgia, but there's ways to adapt them to wherever you're based. And I'm with the Wild Center. And so the mission of the Wild Center is to support resilient communities by connecting people to nature through environmental education and green space. And we've been doing this work since 1997. The Wild Center has been dedicated to providing outstanding hands-on environmental education experiences for students throughout the Atlanta area. We work with schools all over Metro Atlanta, and I love that our webinar series is able to reach folks all over the world. Today, we're talking about strawberries in the garden. And again, my name is Dory Cooper. I'm the school programs manager with the Wild Center. So I help to coordinate our programming in all our schools and make sure that our students are getting high quality lessons from great educators. And if you want to reach me about anything, please do. My email is dory@wildcenter.org. I love receiving messages from you all. And as we go through and talk about strawberries in the garden, please feel free to, like I said, unmute yourself, ask a question, type something in the chat, and I'm more than happy to pause and answer your question. I like this to be a space where we share suggestions, answer questions that are relevant to you to make the best use of our time. So strawberries are one of those top 3 plants that I always recommend for school gardens, and there's a couple of reasons why. One, strawberries are a perennial, which means they grow back every year. And they don't just grow back as they are every year, they grow back and double, triple, quadruple in size and fruit production. So, you know, one plant can really multiply and take over your bed, which is great for school gardens with low budget. It's a great way to not have to replant every year for anyone who's got some time limits or not a lot of maintenance time available. So they're great for school gardens. They don't require any maintenance at all. There's like a few things that we'll talk about that you can do to have even more successful plants, but you can just put a strawberry plant in the garden bed and not do anything, and you'll get strawberries for years. So we love that. Another benefit is strawberry plants, for the most part, stay nice and green all winter. So it's a good thing to have in your school gardens, where sometimes this time of year, that kind of November, December, January, February, your school gardens may start to look a little bit sad. And so strawberries are a great thing to have year round because there's always something green there. You can always lead a lesson about the plant. You know that it'll be there. We'll also talk about today the connections that strawberry plants really help to make in lessons. They're a great focal point. We'll talk through all those different ways that we like to make those connections at the Wild Center. And then, of course, strawberries are great for school gardens because everybody loves them, right? Everybody loves to pick a fresh strawberry and eat it. It's a very approachable produce for children at school of all ages. It's easy to identify. It's just a very natural thing to grow with kids. So we'll talk through all of these as we go through today. So the first question, so I based this series off questions that I get asked very often by teachers that we work with. And so the first thing to address naturally is, when and how should I plant strawberries? Strawberries are kind of a unique plant. You can choose between fall planting those strawberries or spring planting. And to be honest, we do both at the Wild Center and with our school partners. but I'll talk through the two options and then share why we do both. So strawberries are kind of their peak when they produce is in April, ish, depending on where you are, around April, here in Atlanta. And there's two times of the year that you can plant these. So some people feel really strongly about planting in the fall. So that's in November or December. And the idea by planting in the fall is that the plants establish strong root systems before the winter. And then when spring comes and it starts to warm up, it'll produce more fruit is the idea. It's kind of a more mature plant and it will produce more fruit in the spring. Some people also say that the cold weather makes the fruit sweeter. I'm not sure about that, but that is something people like to say. And then you can also plant in the spring. So you can plant them just around this time of year, between January and March. And the benefit there is, if you didn't have time or didn't think to plant them in November, you can still plant them. There's still time. And technically they're quicker to harvest, right? Because we just planted it now and we'll get it in a few months, but there's often less yield. And so I've done both of these things, of these techniques. And a lot of it honestly just comes down to kind of convenience. So if we're doing a lesson, let's say we're planting something and we're teaching a lesson in November, December, and we have plenty of strawberry plants at the Wild Center, I'll bring those and I'll plant them because they're a great thing to last over the winter, especially if it's a school that doesn't have a lot growing in their garden. Often we get calls to lead lessons this time at the end of the fall for schools that don't have really anything growing in their garden. So that's a great plant to bring for then, and that's the reason why I would do this. And similar with spring, sometimes in the spring, we have a lot of strawberries, or we're teaching one of our life cycles lessons that I'll share about. We love in the springtime doing strawberry lessons, tasting strawberries. And so we'll bring plants, plant with students then so that they can see the whole process. So I think both of these options are great. I wouldn't feel discouraged if you didn't plant in the fall and you only plant in the spring, or if it feels like it's better for your curriculum, you're welcome to do that. Okay, so for how to plant strawberries, there are, I guess, like two things I wanted to point out. So sometimes you'll see strawberry seeds at the, at like a hardware store. And I definitely wouldn't recommend planting by seed. It's really hard to get those seeds to germinate and to start. The best way to plant is through roots. And so I found this picture here and I thought this was the most helpful thing. So I mentioned earlier that strawberry plants spread and duplicate. And when they do, it looks like this. So they kind of grow off the center. They grow this kind of second plant, or what people like to call a baby. they grow this second plant here that has all these little roots hanging out. So you can get these roots from other strawberry plants. Some people grow these roots. You can purchase those too. But so you can plant either this kind of baby strawberry plant here, or you can also buy strawberry transplants that look like any other transplant at a nursery. And I'll give a few suggestions for that too. And so either of these options, you plant them the same way. You'll dig a hole in some nice, hopefully beautifully composted soil, but if not, any soil is fine. Strawberries do fairly well in a sandy soil or a loamy soil. And you'll just bury, the roots here. I usually, when I plant transplants, I try to bury the base of the plant as well. I find that gives it a little bit more of a secure hold in the soil. And you'll want to plant those, I would say about 1 foot apart, because they do really spread out. like I said, they replicate every year. So one plant can turn into 2 plants or up to 6 plants. So you want to make sure it has room to spread out within the bed. So by placing 12 inches apart, that gives it enough room to grow and spread. I do recommend kind of keeping strawberries to either one part of a bed or a whole bed. I know oftentimes when we garden with kids or in schools, they like to plant around the outside of a bed, which is fine. It just, those plants will spread and really take over that entire bed. So just think about the spreading when you plant them. But strawberries are cool because you don't really need to plant them in a garden bed, especially if you have limited beds in your garden. They do really well in containers, and that also helps limit the spread. I've seen schools that have strawberry patches where they have kind of a spot in their garden in the ground where they've just put in strawberries. I've also seen hanging strawberry plants. There's a lot that you can do with them. They're a fairly resilient plant. Something else to keep in mind with planting strawberries is that critters and children love to sneak in there and pick the fresh strawberries. So think about where you're putting them. If you know that an area of your school or your home has problems with rabbits or creatures, they will absolutely eat those strawberries. Also with kids, this is kind of the fine balance in school gardening is, you know, if you put those strawberries in a place where, like by the playground or a place where children are often playing, they will come and pick those strawberries, which is a great thing. But if you're planning to use your strawberries for a lesson, that might be a little trickier. So just keep that in mind, just like we do with all of our other garden beds for schools. I wanted to show you what a really full strawberry bed looks like. Like I said, they can really grow in densely with each other, and it's really beautiful to just have this giant bed of strawberries. This looks really fun to search through and try to find strawberries. I think anyone would enjoy that. You can see it looks like they put some kind of critter barrier over it. It looks like just a light screen or mesh that you can fold over, which is a great idea. Personally, I just let the critters eat my strawberries and try to get to them before them, but often there's little bites in them. Okay, so I wanted to share a few suggestions on where you can buy strawberry plants or get strawberry plants. So my first suggestion is to, of course, go to a local nursery, but I would recommend calling them for availability because, like I mentioned, there's the fall planting and the spring planting, and some nurseries may only have them one of those times of year. They may only have them in the fall, or they may only have them in the spring. At the Wild Center, if you're local to Atlanta, our plant sale usually has strawberries in both the fall and the spring. And we do offer 50% off for school gardens and 25% off for educators for their personal gardens. So I definitely recommend coming by and getting strawberries from us. And another suggestion, I know we often have limited budgets with school gardens. So something you can do is ask your neighbors or a community garden. Like I said, they really spread out, and I'm often having to thin out my strawberries and pull off those little babies as they grow, and then I give them to schools that we work with. So you may have a neighbor with a big strawberry patch, or asking PTA if anyone has strawberries, or a community garden if they have any. Strawberries are also really good at, you can dig them out of the ground and replant them, and they do really well. So I think anyone with strawberries knows that that's not a weird thing to ask, and I'm sure they would be happy to help. All right, how should I take care of my strawberry plant? There's very little you need to do. So strawberries do like water. You know, their fruit is a pretty water content heavy fruit. So they do like to get water. And so you don't have to worry too much about watering them over the winter. but in that spring and summer when they're fruiting, you'll want to make sure to give them plenty of water. They also, of course, like sunlight, just that average 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. And then a way to keep them really happy in the summer is by mulching, we call it, with leaves or straw. And so what that is you'll just take, I use leaves. I just take some dried leaves and put them kind of around the plant and on top of the plant, enough so their green leaves are still sticking out to absorb sunlight. But what that does is it keeps the moisture in the soil from evaporating. And that helps keep those strawberry plants maintaining plenty of moisture when it gets really hot. And then the last thing to do if you want to, and this is an optional step, is to thin them out in the fall. So as I was saying, the fall is the perfect time once all of the fruit has grown and been eaten, is to thin out any excess plants that you have. So if you have, if they've taken over, they're falling out of the bed, they're creeping into a part of the garden you don't want them, you can dig them out and you can share them with others or start a second strawberry patch. So very easy to take care of. There's no pruning really. There's no structures that they need. Very simple. I do want to speak about harvesting quickly. I think most folks know when a strawberry is ripe, but I do think it's worth mentioning some harvesting tips. So this is a beautiful, happy strawberry plant right here. It's got tons of bright red fruit. It's got beautiful flowers and unripe fruit. And so to harvest strawberries, all you'll do is you can use your fingers or some scissors, and you'll just snip the stem of the strawberry right here. And you want to make sure that strawberry is nice and ripe. Sometimes it's helpful to flip it over because one side can be beautifully ripe and the other side is still white. So you can flip that over. That's something to teach students. Sometimes they just get excited and they'll pick these unripe fruits. And, you know, if they do, that is what it is. But it is helpful to teach them what to look for when harvesting the strawberry. And as you pick off those fruits, you'll leave the plants in the ground. And then it will continue to keep regrowing strawberries for quite a while. I also like to just eat the strawberry and then throw the top back in the soil. So the little green top with the fruit. I just like to throw it back in there with the strawberries, add a little compost and worm food in there. And that, I think students enjoy doing that too. Keep in mind what this plant looks like when we talk about some of our connections to lessons, especially this pretty white and yellow flower. The strawberry plant is a pretty easy one to identify, especially because of that flower. It's fairly unique. And so it does help with the lessons that we'll be talking about. Any questions so far on growing or harvesting or taking care of strawberries? So let's talk about using strawberry plants in lessons. Strawberry plants are one of my personal favorites to connect to a lot of lessons. I think they're really recognizable. Students understand strawberries. They have unique features to them, like that yellow flower I was talking about. I think they're just a really great entryway and connection for students in the garden. So as I was putting this together, I realized I have a kind of long list of things that strawberry plants can be used for. Because like I said, they really are a great connection. The main lesson, I would say, that we use strawberry plants for and highlight strawberry plants is the life cycles of a plant. And parts of the plant, they really go together. So I'll talk through the life cycles of the strawberry plant and how we would teach that to students. And then we can discuss some of these other connections that can be made, but there really are endless connections. So This is an image that I found. We have another one that we use. There's also a lot of strawberry life cycle and plant parts coloring sheets that can be fun. So this here is the life cycle of a strawberry plant. As we would teach students, a strawberry has over 200 seeds on the outside, and each one of those seeds turns into a plant that makes more strawberries. And so we talk through the seeds. The seed then grows roots into the ground. Those roots grow strawberry plant leaves, and we usually point to the leaves of the plant. Then it grows those beautiful yellow and white flowers. And those flowers get pollinated, right? And then they create fruit. And that fruit starts out white, and then it grows red, and then we can eat it, or it falls into the garden, and that whole cycle starts all over again. So going through this life cycle while showing them the plant in the garden, whether it has fruit or not, is a really helpful way for students to identify and remember that life cycle. We also often do yoga that goes along with this, a yoga sequence that we call seed yoga, but for the sake of this, it would be called strawberry plant yoga. I found a video of someone from Small Bites Club doing it, and ours is a little bit different, but I thought it would be helpful to play this for you. Let's see if the sound works okay. So the way that I typically do it is very similar. Start in a ball on the ground and then stretch up to your stems, stretch arms out to leaves. I like to say the plant creates a flower around your faces, and then that flower turns into a fruit, which falls to the ground, and we do it all over again, and you start back as a little seed. And that's a great way to teach life cycles and relate it to any plant. We usually do that with strawberry plants. So of course, parts of the plant can be tied to this. Pollination is another fun lesson to tie to a strawberry plant, because in order for those strawberry plants to produce strawberry fruits, they need to be pollinated. And that's a big motivator for students, right? Because they want more strawberries to eat. So explaining that pollinators are necessary so that our strawberry plants can make more strawberries is really engaging to students. And so that could be a way to, teach about the basics of pollination, or plant a pollinator garden to attract those pollinators. That's a really common connection we make as well. Of course, you can do a nutrition lesson and taste the strawberries. This could be related to Eat a Rainbow, encouraging eating different color fruits and vegetables. Another one is 5 senses with strawberries. That strawberry plant has several different colors, so they can identify those colors, the smells, the textures of the plants and the fruits and the flowers. That's a really engaging one for especially younger students. You could even connect food webs with strawberry plants, or any plant, but with strawberry plants, thinking about who's eating the strawberry plant, where it is in the food chain, going through your food webs and food chains, starting with kind of featuring the strawberry plant could be fun. I've also done scientific drawings with strawberry plants, and that's great for all ages, from like 2nd grade through middle school. Again, because they know what it is and they can relate to it, I find students are often more invested. And it's a fun one to draw because the shapes of the leaves are really unique. The flowers are fairly simple. It's not too complicated. There's a lot of texture on the leaves. So that's a fun one to do with scientific drawings or observations. You could also do any kind of math with this. I just thought about too. You could count the number of flowers, count the number of strawberries, track that over time, create a graph of yields. You could really start collecting data from your strawberry plant. And I showed you that yoga class, but does anyone have any ideas, questions, or suggestions? I'd like to open it up to any ideas or things that you may have done in the past. No? All right. Well, that's okay. Feel free, as I mentioned, to reach out to me anytime if you have questions, if you want to take a picture and say, hey, does this look okay, or what should I do? Please feel free to reach out. And I always love seeing your successful school garden. So feel free to also share any successes that you've had in your garden. Our next webinar will be coming up in March, and we'll be talking about getting your gardens ready for spring, and the steps that you can be taking to make sure it's ready to go and producing by the end of the year. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time, and good luck growing strawberries.